I'll do a quick introduction myself. So I'm the Chief Growth and Strategy Officer at Secure Components, and Stephan and I worked together to develop RAS over the last couple of years, and it's been such an honor and a pleasure to work with industry and really try to find a new perspective, or a perspective that we thought could provide another layer of service and a way to avoid a lot of the risks that we were seeing. We were seeing that despite all of the tools and resources that exist, there's still so many challenges. So how could we attack this from a different perspective? And from the procurement history that we had, use the market knowledge that we know could be used to get ahead of risk. So that's what Stephan and I have worked together on the last few years. I'll let him take it away.
Okay,
we can see it now, Steph.
Okay, great. All right. So thank you.
And sorry, one last thing. I'll be on chat. So if anyone has questions along the way, feel free to pop them in the chat, because I know it's easy to forget.
Okay, so go to the next one. All right. So traditionally, obsolescence and obsolescence management has been an engineering focus, and the responsibility has been put on engineering. So over time, working with DoD directly and prime defense contractors, traditionally at Secure Components, we were sourcing obsolete parts for defense programs. And over time, I realized that, a lot of these parts that they're having to source are not obsolete, or they have just gone obsolete. And it was pretty frustrating to think, that you could have saved a lot of money, reduced your risk, increase your supply chain security if you had known what the market was doing and where your parts were within the marketplace. And that is where we have put a lot of our focus, specifically with the board level components, the parts that are going on their circuit card assemblies that tend to be the ones maybe due to the value that get ignored or aren't thoroughly checked during quarterly updates on your bill of material. We know that a lot of people rely on PCNs, the product change notices. And the thing with the PCNs is that, first slide, yeah, that a PCN is really a suggestion. It's not a shall. Companies are asked to provide them, but they don't always provide them. And as you can see on the chart here, it was from 2023. You're missing about 20% of the parts, no PCN issued. And if your BOM is a little more complex and not maybe some of the more popular manufacturers, you might not get any PCNs. So the goal for us is to provide a resilient, agile, and secure platform to help our customers review their bill of material and stay proactive and ahead of supply chain risk. So for us to rely on a PCN, the thought is that if I'm waiting on the PCN, that is reactive, waiting for someone to tell me that last time buy is coming, or some of the PCNs just say the part is now obsolete. One of the issues with that is that it hurts the agility of our customers, and it hurts your capability to navigate prior to a PCN and still be able to get the components you need at the prices you want. And that's due to working within a global supply chain. And the global market, as we know, is focused on companies like Apple and not DoD. So they're going to move as fast as technology moves, whereas we know in DoD, the life cycle systems are longer, procurement times are longer, and it's tough to stay up with how quickly that market is moving. With regards to the parts and where they're coming from, we have the capability to, first and foremost, we're always looking to give information with regards to what is available from authorized distribution. We also have the capability to track secondary market quantities and sources of supply, so that if there are parts on your bill of material that are already obsolete, but you want to know, am I able to still procure these from the secondary market to get through to the next design or next manufacturing phase without having to make a complete change to my bill of material? We have that capability as well. We can track them, and we have been on the DLA's sourcing approval list for microcircuit and semiconductors. So we're pre-authorized to sell obsolete components to DLA. That's part of what helps keep that supply chain secure, even when there are parts that are already obsolete. So in order to do all this, we created a software program we call RAS, which stands for Resilient, Agile, and Secure. And what we're doing is we are tracking component availability customized to our customers' bill of materials and their total usage of each part on that bill of material. As you can see, 33% of parts that we track are active, but still have a high risk, according to RAS, due to the procurement risk. You're going to have your parts that are obsolete, makes up 17% roughly, and the other risk is not recommended for new design parts. These parts are typically, though, known, right? You typically know if I have obsolete parts, or if a PCN notice was issued that this part is not recommended for new design. So in order to offset, our critical gap forecasting will help you avoid shortages and now tariffs, right? With a changing market, changes in policy, natural disasters, anything that could impact your capability to procure the parts on your BOM that you require. There are things that are completely out of our control. This is enabled by continuous monitoring of the bill of material. You say something, Jess?
Yeah, so sorry. I think what's interesting here about procurement risk and the 33% is that it's customized to each individual program. So unlike a lot of tools, there are several tools out there that, our customers, our collective customers, and DoD are using, but oftentimes there's a huge gap in the vision that they have, because they're looking at obsolescence, they're looking at PCNs, they're looking at life cycle. And life cycle does not cover the volatility of the market. We're trying to really track the volatility of the market to the customer's individual production schedule, and it really, which Stephan will go into, I think blends with the material readiness that Brian is doing, that NCDMM is focused on, because that is the moment when they're going from low rip to full rate production, where oftentimes there's a key gap there, where they don't see how they're not going to be able to keep up for various reasons throughout their whole bill of materials to their production schedule. And that's when we start seeing loss in ROI, inefficiencies, and delays. So that's where we're really focused on catching that. When Stephan says procurement risk, I just want to give some insight to what procurement risk means.
Yes, thank you. So this is a snapshot of how we do it through RAS. And the key here is, you'll see on the left-hand side, again, the customization part. So this was a customer whose the total lifecycle quantity required for this part beginning with ADUM was 16,285. Total quantity available is telling us, okay, this is how many are available in the marketplace right now. We can see the price. We can see the price if we bought the total quantity at once, extended year cost, and again, total cost. What's prevalent on this screen is that these are the sources of supply we would go to, right? We are pulling directly from authorized distribution to see, okay, if we had to buy, let's say, 7,000, where would we get them? Who would they come from? Something that we also found interesting and we can help with is that you'll notice if the amount that they needed, let's say it's 3,257, that amount is not available at one source. It takes multiple authorized sources to make up the total quantity, which we know can be sometimes an issue for procurement teams if not every authorized distributor is on their AVL, or you have some authorized distributors that don't always provide the required certifications with the parts. So we can look over the options, and given that this is customized, we would ask for a list of suppliers on their AVL so that anytime we're going to make a recommendation to them of what is available on the marketplace and where to go, we're only including companies that they are set to buy it from. Because our goal isn't to make the procurements on their behalf. We can if it's needed, but the goal is just to steer them in the right direction, let them know quickly who has it, who's on your AVL, and what quantities are available for them. Want me to go back?
No, yeah, just for clarity then, I think it was clear in what Steph said. So this is specific to the customer's AVL, that list of vendors.
Right.
We'll also see, maybe Analog is not someone that you specifically can procure from, but we'll be able to say, you can go to Analog if you're not able to get it on your AVL. So we can give you insights, but we're going to increase your procurement risk if they're outside of where the customer has said that they, or the government has said that they can buy. That way you have both insights, a way forward if it's outside of it, but knowing your risk level if it's not going to follow your requirements.
So one of the things we focused on in developing the software was to ensure that the reporting of total stock available was accurate. So I'm sure a lot of you maybe have used sites where they're going to aggregate the total availability of a part. And what we noticed on many of these sites was the repeat of the same stock, which I've highlighted here. We know that Newark is located in the US, but they also have their sister company Farnell in Europe and Element 14 serving Asia. You see from this shot on the right, it's listing 84 3 times. On the left with RES, we're listing 84 total. And that was one of the most important things to us, because if that information is not correct, then the decisions that or recommendations we make would be greatly impacted. So by eliminating the duplication of total stock available, we're able to give a true number to work off of. Okay. This is an example of a material readiness assessment that we did for a customer that was using 3,300 pieces of this part per year, and we're going to have to go to 9,600. So what we did was we wanted to see if they wanted to make this procurement at one time, would the marketplace be able to sustain it? Would they be able to buy the total quantity required, or was there a better time to buy than others? And this is tracking the availability throughout. So you can see once they came out of COVID, this part was stocked, but still below the total usage rate that this company was going to need. And in the following 6 months that we tracked it, it never once was the full quantity available to them. So this is what we're using to set up, as we'll show a little bit later, the different procurement schedules or recommendations, because we have an understanding of what's going on in the market and specifically to that part and to the customer's requirements. One other thing I'd like to point out is here we can see that procurement risk of 3. Obsolescence risk is only 1. One of the main reasons this procurement risk is 3 is because this customer needs to use 9,600 on every production run, and that quantity is likely not going to be available in one shot, which could lead to lead times, which is not a big deal if it's falling within the lead times that they are allowed to, won't impact their production. But it's something we're monitoring because it could change, at any point, especially if there's gaps in production.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
Up there. And Brian, I'm going to be looking to you maybe to chime in here too. And maybe the question is more for Brian. Brian, when we do MRAs, like manufacturing readiness assessments, do we get to the level of, in one of those steps, looking at the supply chain in terms of procurement of parts and whether or not there's going to be risk in the future? Does it get to that level in our assessments?
So awesome question, Jim. So that's what led me to Secure Components. So I've been in, I was looking back at my records. We've been kind of together, knowing each other, having conversations, Stephan, Jessica, and myself for over a year now. But prior to that, I interviewed about 5 different companies that had similar capability, but they weren't very conducive to the conversation and the activity that Secure Components is. They were more interested in selling a license to have those supply chains analyzed either by our customers or by us. But, Secure Components was able to come in and was very receptive to project-based activity to where we can provide that supply chain analysis, which is one thread of the MRAs, to get to answer your question now, Jim, to analyze the supply chain for MRAs and provide mitigation strategies and those types of things.
Yeah, that's great, right? Because MRAs are all about reducing risk and advancing. So these things need to be looked at because it's a major risk to the future manufacturing of the product.
Absolutely. And we even went so far as to do a kind of a case study early on, just provided a sanitized bill of material to from one of our project teams to Secure Components. They analyzed and were able to provide an understanding of risk within that supply chain. When you have to look at final buys, when you may want to do a refresh, all those types of things based upon their procurement schedule and production schedule. So yeah, it's been a pretty awesome experience for me. We had our OSD representatives here. I'd have to dig up their names exactly, but I showed them that bill of material and what Secure Components was able to provide. And their exact term was, "Why isn't everyone doing this?" So yeah, it's pretty powerful tool, Jim.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Susan had there's 2 things I'd love to add to that. First of all, Susan had asked if we can monitor just American-made products. That's complex in one way because there isn't enough production yet in the U.S. of board-level electronic components, specifically in the microcircuit level. That being said, we can tell you where everything is made. So we can still, and then there's the different levels of where is it assembled, where is the original, maybe the component produced and then assembled in the U.S. But we can dial into the level required by the customer 100%. So that's helpful and complex because of the supply chain itself. In addition to one thing that Brian was saying, and what I think you were asking also, Jim, is that we are able to, when you were talking about the future, one of, my pleasure, Susan, is that we're also forecasting. So we are, to the level that's possible, and that requires, Stephan's going to dial into that a little bit, we're predicting, right? But we're using the market to make better predictions and better choices. We might be more ahead than necessary, but at least the customer and you, if we're working together, will know the risk level to waiting and that it might be better just to err on the side of being a little bit ahead.
Okay, thank you. Is it all electronics manufacturing focused, or can you guys look at various BOMs outside of electronics?
We've looked at various BOMs. If there's a lot of hardware, connectors, we have a pretty good handle on that. It's not as fast as the electronics right now, but we're looking to add more APIs so we can capture more market data, especially within connectors and mil-spec hardware. We have a lot of sources for that. So those are some APIs that we're looking to add so that we can give the same type of report and overview on those components as well.
All right, thank you.
Yep. So that's a good introduction for this next slide. So one thing on this slide you'll see on the left is, again, the procurement risk. And this, because it's customized, the factors that go into it will change. So this part has a procurement risk of 3. Again, the obsolescence risk is only 1. It is active. End of life is 7 years. So our customer said, look, the longest acceptable lead time we can wait is 24 weeks. So one of the factors going into this thing being a procurement risk of 3 is that at this time, the market lead time was 33 weeks. This is a active part. Active parts, if you look at the multi-source score, high risk for looking for another manufacturer for an IC. Right? This is an analog device part, maybe a crossover to a Texas Instrument, for example, but it won't be a drop-in replacement. This is a high demand part, and that's important because high demand means high demand from mostly the commercial marketplace. So again, your Apples and Dells are the primary, going to drive the demand for this part, whereas DoD we know is going to be a little bit behind. So we're also looking at the end of life based on the product life cycle, or I think you could think of it as the family of this part's life cycle. And from when this part was originally introduced into the market to where we were in 2025 when we did this one, typically the parts in that family were already EOL. So that's another indicator to us that, there's nothing being said by analog right now, no PCNs or anything, but the reality is that it's probably not going to be around for much longer. Probably definitely not 7 years. We're also looking at the available stock with regards to the total quantity required by the customer, which also triggers alerts within RAS that lets us know anytime the total quantity available from the marketplace is less than the quantity required by the customer, we get an alert to begin really to monitor and, let the customer know, number one, and then we're going to see, depending on when they're going to buy, if the idea was originally to buy, let's say maybe in March of 2025, right? Once the quantities got above the total quantity required for the year, we call that the window of opportunity. And our recommendation would be to buy all the parts you require now. And that's based off, again, what we see historically with the stocking levels of the part, if we're seeing increased usage of the part, but that's factored in to that part risk. And when that window comes, it'll be our recommendation. Whether the customer wants to do it or not, it's up to them. But we see this a lot, especially with ICs, that when your usage rate gets above a certain number, there's going to be a specific window where you'll be able to order them, especially if you're having a lead time restrict like they have here, 24 weeks, and it's a 33-week lead time. So that is where we're looking for the window of opportunity to procure.
And that window may have more data points. So we have a thorough onboarding process where that's when we gather all of the requirements of the customer. Also, if we're working with you on several bill of materials, and it's a tricky part, we'll cross-reference all of the bill of materials and say, okay, now is the time, based on your requirements for this particular part across these 3 programs, that you should buy. So we can refine that and tweak the woo based on whatever your requirements are. Just wanted to give that nuance.
Mm-hmm. So here's one of the deliverables that we provide, and this is our high risk report. So what we're looking at here are the parts that are the greatest threat to the program. And this is a overview. One of the things I like to point out is that, again, we have a lot of 3s on the procurement, but just 1 on the obsolescence risks. Active part. So this is a good example. This part, if the customer goes to look at it, it sees, okay, it's active for another 5 years. When you go to buy it, you find out that they are no longer being stocked by authorized distribution. The stock is limited. Anytime we see that, that is an indication that the demand has dried up from the major players in the market. And if the demand dries up, we're going to look at increased lead times with a last time buy notice probably going to come out maybe 6-7 months, but the idea is to get in front of that. So we're going to make the recommendation to buy for the next 3 years so that this part never becomes an issue down the road. We also have a traditional last time buy life cycle. And we're going to tell, okay, the full quantity is available at DigiKey. On the next report, you'll see the full quantities, but this is a high level view to understand what parts are the largest threat to my program. The next report you'll get would be the recommendations. And this is where we give more detail with regards to why we're making the recommendation, where to buy the parts, what the cost would be to you if you decide to buy them now, so that decisions can be made and actions can be taken, which was being able to take action to us is something that we identified early on in looking at other programs and kind of, how they analyze a bill of material and realize that, the program can tell you all day long that this is going to be a problem and this may be a problem, but we want our customers to have an actual idea of a way forward, right? So and understanding the cost, if you have to maybe put in for extra funding, right? And you have to give a business case as to why I need this funding now. You can provide really this report that says, show them your production cycle and when you're going to need the parts. And I'm trying to avoid future issues down the road, save costs by buying these now so that I'll be able to fulfill production and even go into sustainment without having to buy parts from a secondary market or incurring any other kind of risk. You're able to lock up the ones that you believe are critical to your production. This is a simple overview of what we've seen on many bill of materials, taking the combined information and looking at the type of recommendations that are generally made. And this is normally program specific, and this graph is taking programs that were in low rate initial production about to go into full rate. So these were the type of recommendations that we typically see. And these last time buys on here, these are not PCN notice for the part that it's in last time buy. This is recommending you do a last time buy prior to facing some obsolescence issues down the road. So it's a pretty wide range. And again, a lot of the parts we're talking about are active. They're not obsolete. They're not listed as not NR&D or last time buy. They're just, the market is telling us this is the way it's going. And based on your production schedule and your requirements, these parts have an elevated threat. This is an example of a proactive procurement schedule we did for a customer. The issue here, you can see they have a high usage rate, over 42,000. when you go to buy these from authorized distribution, they'll only sell 20,000 at a time. So knowing this, this was a situation where we had to lay out the procurement schedule to ensure that all the parts that you required were there on time. Time sensitive here, obviously, because if you wait too long, you're not going to get, the parts in on time. Low stocking levels were always a thing with this part. So when that usage rate increases, that's always a key, that's a part you want to look at no matter what, even if it's a resistor. That's something that's really going to impact your capability to procure in the marketplace. And one more example, this part, not recommended for new design. Their usage rate is very high, 126,720. The stocking levels are low. So what we're doing here is saying, okay, in order to get all the parts you require, here's when you need to start making your buys given the lead times and the potential also for a longer lead time, depending on the total quantity that you're procuring. But this to us is valuable because it's something that, the procurement teams we work with don't have to worry about, right? It's research we've already done for them, and it sets them up for success on their current build and builds in the future. So they've locked in a part. We can schedule out the deliveries. Makes it much, easier to be on time on your production. Increases your material readiness, and it should also reduce your costs because you're not buying, after a PCN has come out saying that this part is going to be a last time buy with the last time ship date. And then funding. So we know that NCDMM has a contract vehicle. I believe they have an IDIQ through Redstone. There's two other ways your customers can procure our services, and if they need to components as well through us, is through Oasis Plus. And we have for Navy customers an IDI, not IDIQ, it's not correct here. It's just what do they call it? It's a mask they can buy. I think there's 55
It's a GSA schedule, right?
Oh, no, that's the Oasis Plus. On the IDIQ for Navy, I think there's 65 PSC codes listed on there that they're able to procure. And that includes services and components. And the reason we were attracted to the Navy one was because it was something that we saw was pretty rare, where you can literally just buy components, which I haven't seen that much. I know Oasis Plus gives you that opportunity, but I hadn't seen, that was one of the reasons we bid it, was to provide that service, because it is kind of rare that they'll let you just buy piece parts, at least in my experience.
Yeah, I think to go back a little bit, I think one thing that's kind of interesting to think about, and I don't know if you run into this, I'd love all of your feedback on that, but it's difficult to figure out how this is considered DMSMS, right? So how do we pay for that? And oftentimes I find that programs are trying to assign it to the program, which can be challenging because then they're taking a part of the funding for the program. It might be, they may not be able to justify it, or they may struggle with that. Whereas if they're looking at it as a capital investment, it's across all programs, it creates greater efficiency for the customer and greater ROI savings ultimately. And they're able to, it's a smaller amount they're applying to each program. And then they don't have a siloed sense of looking at their bombs on a DMSMS level, which is where the greatest amount of issues happen. They're only looking quarterly. They're only looking at this bill of material. They only have 3 engineers on that license. So there's huge gaps in visibility and large amounts of risk that develop in that time. The other reason for the contracting vehicles, it's a great way to fund it, but if we're looking at it as a on a service level, with the addition of being able to procure parts, then we can look at it as partners, right? We can go, okay, what if the solution is additive manufacturing? That's included. As RAS as a program, it's comprehensive solutions. So we're not trying to just report, okay, this is going to be volatile. There's going to be an issue on your bill of materials. We're trying to say this particular part is going to have this risk level at this time, this potential cost increase. Here are a myriad of solutions we could do. If you can't pay at this point and you want to wait, you want to push it out 3 months, let's look at aftermarket production. Let's look at additive manufacturing solutions. It depends on what the situation is, but we want to look at it holistically. And I feel like there's a few different ways to do that with the funding vehicles and looking at it as a capital expense. So just wanted to throw that out there. And
Jessica, my 2 cents on that too is I think sometimes it comes down to leadership within the organizations, right?
yeah,
If you have the right leadership that understands the cost of doing business and the advantages of taking advantage of systems or softwares or tools like this that's going to benefit them, it should be a no-brainer, in my opinion, or an easy sell, so to speak. I
right.
think the people that get caught up into the quarterly earnings or the, stock prices and things like that are very short-sighted. If they could just take a step back and, to your point, look at it holistically on how eventually it's going to save them money, reduce risk to their program, avoid cost overruns, avoid product delays. I think it comes down to leadership. And I hate to say that, but if you have strong leaders in these organizations, I think they'll see the benefit.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Jim. I would love to also get your insight on how NCDMM approaches and how we can be of service in that. I mean, I guess if together, is there a way that we could be approaching leadership with it? I think this tends to come in at the engineering level, and that's where the risk and challenge is, because the decision needs to be made a little bit higher up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's case by case basis and the customers we're dealing with and the situations that we're running into. And to your point, trying to find the right people to pull in those meetings to educate them. And maybe we don't meet the deadlines or the needs on the current program, but at least make them aware of systems or softwares or tools like this that on their next program, to your point, Jessica, they introduce it way early on. And build it into their actual process flow so that it's, again, it's a hammer for a nail, right? I mean, it's the tool to bring out of the toolbox when you need it, and you need to bring it out early so you're predicting and helping build, and to Brian's point, reduce risk of the overall program.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't have a great answer for you. It's case by case, it's program by program, it's people by people. I think from our side, awareness of this and us making sure that we interject these types of comments and communication into our meetings with clients, and then pulling you guys in as necessary when we see an opportunity. Brian, I don't know if there's anything more for you to add on to that.
Yeah, I mean, all great points by everyone. Typically how I see it come out in conversation, at least during MRAs, you'll start having the conversation about diminishing material supply, right? And obsolescence. And we didn't have a really good method to kind of address that, whether it be setting up mitigation strategies or what have you. But providing awareness that this, this technology, this process, this data exists and can be provided is, a phenomenal exponential step in the correct direction to be able to have that conversation with companies, with, management, with, and kind of even shift that culture. So it just extremely beneficial for just solely for the conversation, and then for the customer or project partner to have access to this information to address, you know, to their bill of materials,
Right.
how to address those supply chain issues.
Do we have any procurement members on the meeting? I'd love your feedback, or did anyone else have any questions or thoughts? I know Zane,
I'm probably closest to the procurement area, although I'm not in procurement, but I do review a lot of the costs that are brought to us by our vendors and our partners that we work with. I guess I think this is a very valuable tool, especially for companies that have, you know, long-term products that have, you know, the government's looking for, or, you know, industry is looking for, to keep them up to speed and keep them not have any downtime in their lines. I mean, to me, it's very valuable. I used to work in a manufacturing environment, and that was one of the key things that the planners had so much they'd struggle with. You know, if we had a part that, you know, again, like you said, maybe the company will only sell you 20,000 at a time, but you need to get 40,000 out right now.
Yeah.
You know, that a lot of what you said, I think, is valuable input. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
thank you, Susan. Well, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here. We really, our goal is to be strong team members to you. And so any questions? We've been pulled on a few meetings. Brian and Mike Doherty pulled us on a meeting with one of the manufacturers he was working with, and we love to share insights and to help in any way we can. So please feel free to reach out. And Zane, I know you and your team, or the group that you're with, joined a little bit late. Did you guys have any questions? Did you miss anything? It's okay if you didn't. You don't have to share. I guess that's it for us then.
Yeah.
So on the flip side of that, you mentioned we have pulled you into conversations, but Secure Components, Jessica, Stephan, you both have pulled NCDMM, myself, Mike, into conversation as well. So this has very much been a, you know, two-sided relationship, which I appreciate. So if there aren't any more questions, anyone, feel free to reach out to Stephan and Jessica directly. Feel free to reach out to me. We converse regularly-ish. And you know, if you need me to pass anything on or what have you, just let me know. We can get you all looped together and utilize the tools.
Great.
Excellent.
Appreciate
Yeah. And one thing that we will share is we don't really think of RAS exactly as a tool, because I think tools are things that you reference and you see and you don't always know. Big data is a lot, right? And we know how big it is. Oh, it's my pleasure. We know how big it is to have to manage these procurement schedules. It's massive.
Oh, yeah.
So data can just be overwhelming, and that's where we have analysts on hand that are translating the data. And yeah, hope that's helpful. So thank you guys for having us.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate the time.
Perfect.
Thank you very much for the information.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy.
All
Take
right.
care, you guys.